Okay, so we've got great numbers. I'm going to kick off now because we have got a really packed agenda today. So hello and welcome to our anniversary edition of the European Smart Working Network. It's exactly 1 year since we launched. I'm Ben Hutchinson and hosting today. We've also got our co-founders, Philip van Hoot and Andy Lake, plus a number of different speakers for today who I'll take you through in just a moment. If I could just remind everyone the house rules, that we've got Chatham House rules, which means that we ask you to protect the confidentiality of what's discussed today. So don't be repeating the companies and the organizations, please. This is a knowledge sharing network and a non-selling network as well. And today's focus is going to be on smart working leadership. So we've got lots of leading speakers in this area. We're going to start with Mark Dekan, who's spoken for us before. He's the CEO of Ringier, Axel. Give us a wave, Mark. And Mark is going to be focusing on servant leadership and the change they've made to their leadership culture in the large media organization. We're then going to move on to Dr. Laura Hambley. She's looking at distributed leadership competencies and how we can continue to lead successfully in a world of hybrid working. Next, we have Anne Bisschop. It's another fireside chat with our co-founder, Philip van Hoot. And Anne is going to look at well-being as a competence. She's authored a number of different books looking at how you can really boost well-being, but also boost the profits of the company and how the two things go hand in hand. Finally, we have Ilaria, our very own country lead from Italy, and Silvia, and they're going to have a look at happiness as a competence and the power of positive organizations. A very energizing session, that one, and we'll come on to that one at the end. So looking forward to that. And we're finishing off with a 25-minute Q&A session. So if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat during the presentations. I'll be collating questions. If we have time for one cheeky question at the end of a presenter's slot, I may ask it, or otherwise we'll save it for the end. So at this point, if I can ask, thanks very much, speakers, for introducing yourselves. If I could ask you to all turn webcams off for now as we start to move towards our very first presentation. So first of all, we've got Philip and Mark, and they're going to present on the topic of servant leadership. Thank you. I'll just put you on spotlight now. Okay, Philip and Mark, you are spotlighted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And great to have you again, Mark, here. I'm just curious where executives and leaders are hanging out these days. So would you mind disclosing to us where you are in terms of location and whether you are in the office, at home, or somewhere in between, and for what good reason?
Yes, hello everybody. Pleasure to be with you again. I'm actually joining you today from Warsaw, Poland. I'm in the office in Warsaw in Poland because we have this week 2 days collaboration days. So this is our way of how we address the hybrid work challenge. Every second week we come together as the exec leader of the company, some 30 to 40 people, to spend 2 days together in the office and work on topics which we better discuss in person rather than online.
Good. And you just shared with a couple of us an interesting finding. Would you mind repeating that, Mark?
Well, I mean, when we introduced this concept, first of all, it was, of course, and still is an experiment. So we started with that. It's now the second time we have these collaboration days. So our experience is still very, very fresh. But what we can clearly see is that I'm surprised that our people, they are not tending to have as many meetings as possible than on-site. The contrary is true. They are very picky, very critical when you have on-site meetings, and they do not deliver the experience they expect. So what I would like to say is when you have a meeting and there is low energy in the room because it's poorly conducted or the topic is not ideal to engage the people, then we get questions like, but for this meeting, do we really have to come to the office? I mean, we could have done it much more effectively online. And that leads me to the conclusion that people will not only expect some added value from the office, from the physical office in the future, in terms of the building and the infrastructure, but particularly the experience, the behaviors set out in a meeting, they matter. So people really, they benchmark on-site meetings with online meetings, and they are now in the middle of the process to find out for themselves, but to evaluate in general which meetings are held in the best possible way on-site and which one are better done online. And I think this is a very, very good development, because if everybody is taking this attitude, it will gradually lead us to the optimal form of hybrid, when we really know and have the experience which tasks, which meetings we have to perform in which format.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Mark. Hey, so it's quite a while back, 9 months if I recall, where you shared with us some of the principles and the policies and the behaviors around servant leadership. That was in February. Would you mind, for the people who were not there, just quickly recapping the do's and the don'ts of servant leadership?
Well, I mean, servant leadership is very much related to a culture which is inclusive, to a culture where engagement and trust are very critical to succeed. And I think the concept is around for some time. But with the emergence of remote-centric organizations, I think it has become even more critical, because it seems to be not only the most effective way of leading in such an environment, but I think it's almost the only way to lead, because authoritarian styles, they simply don't work in a remote environment. So if you don't give the trust to the people, they will not follow, or they will disconnect and disengage. So the idea is also based on the concept that engagement drives better results in an organization. And maybe it's even not a concept, servant leadership. It's probably more a set of behaviors. It's about asking questions. It's about a coaching approach. It's about creating an environment in which people can perform and strive. And this is the first task and mission of a leader. And for me personally, you know, I got into this topic because I wanted to drive engagement in our organization. And I remember one critical moment for me to do this was at one of our biggest events, People Awards, which we have every year. It's an event where we award our employees for outstanding achievements. And we had that meeting, I remember, in 2018. It was an event and we had 1,000 people there. And in front of everyone, also as a sort of a, maybe in the initial as a marketing gag to put more attention on engagement in the company, I announced that I step back in front of everyone from my role as Chief Executive Officer, just to announce in the next minute that I step up again as Chief Engagement Officer, still CEO, yeah, but different meaning. And that kind of move did something very interesting to my leadership, because once I combined my title with the mission to drive engagement, it became a mission. And from that moment on, every kind of leadership decision I had to take, I always answered in the context of, okay, if we do this, how will that impact engagement in the company? How will that include more people in getting active? How I activate the workforce? How I make them more committed to the company? How we motivate them? And that was really for me a very transformative experience. So if I can share one learning over this journey with other leaders out there, consider combining your title with your mission. It's a very transformative and rewarding experience.
Hey, that's fantastic, Mark, because we've been sharing things with each other for about 15 months, and I've never heard the background of you using Chief Engagement Officer. So now I know why you are using it. Excellent. Hey, so I want to come back to your earlier statement that that virtual meetings can achieve so much, right? So it's like the plat du jour, right? It's something that we got to eat every day, multiple times, sometimes maybe too many times. So they're unavoidable. And therefore, my question to you, right? What are you doing in all of these meetings to make distributed meetings worthwhile and memorable? What is your set of tricks, quote unquote?
I mean, it starts also with engagement. So just yesterday, we had our executive circle, which is a pure online meeting where my XX team, some 40 people join. And I realized that not everybody in the beginning had the camera on. Yeah. So I reminded them kindly of our remote etiquette. I said, guys, you remember one rule we set, is that cameras are switched on. And in case there is a good reason you cannot switch them on, it's no problem. Just announce it, yeah, and say why it's not on, yeah. And with that, we establish a rule where it's kind of a kind of politeness that the camera is switched on, yeah. So it's an etiquette, and I think that's important, yeah. That you have really the people then also. That you see them when their presentations, they can switch it off, that's no problem. But at least that you have this sense of being united and also see your people there. And on top of that, what's very important is that the moderator, the host of the meeting, assumes some sort of animator. Yeah, so you really have to do something extra to involve everyone. Yeah, so to also pass out questions. I think important is also that the meeting experience itself is engaging. So you have to orchestrate much better what topics you cover, how long you cover them, that it's not becoming monotonous. So I think for the leader, for the host of the meeting, it's much more challenging than normal meetings. You have to put more effort into it. And at the end of the meeting, what I always do, I ask for feedback. So we have a simple survey, which we do where they rate quickly 2 questions, the remote experience. And when we see that a meeting has scored lower, then I also reach out for feedback. I ask, okay, guys, what didn't you like this time? Yeah. And that is actually, in principle, what I see, what is very critical for meetings. Yeah. So, of course.
Thanks for sharing those, Mark. So you would have seen from the agenda that that well-being is an important topic, and energizing and keeping the energy for people high so that their engagement can flow. I know that you've done quite a bit on well-being in Ringier, Axel, Springer. Would you mind sharing with us what the core ingredients are of the well-being program in your organization?
I mean, we run an energy audit. That was the starting point. We really inquired about the state of the people when it came to their well-being. And on the basis of this, we also gave them recommendations. That was a structured survey. And then according to your results, you got a set of recommendations, what you can improve. But we didn't leave it only at that stage. We also implemented a series of coaching sessions where we had regular live shows where we invited experts who gave tips how to maintain better balance, how to take better care of nutrition. We discussed quality of sleep. So many aspects were covered where people could really get additional input. And I think what was particularly rewarding was that we implemented a psychology program where we have a series of support elements, and of our 1,700 people, 800 benefited from it. So they participated in it. And, that first of all has shown us that there was a big demand for it, but it has also shown us that there is a big trust. Because this is a very, a very private, very personal topic, but people, they had a need and they were also not afraid to take the help. And it even emerged in certain meetings where people from the company were supporting each other with mutual tips and tricks, how to cope better with the burden, which was particularly strong, of course, during the severe moments of the lockdown.
Yeah. So, Mark, the other topic which is on the top of the mind of many people is this whole question about the office and when people are going to return to the office. What are the general? What is the approach in general that you have set out for your organization at this very moment?
Yeah, we have taken a very liberal approach. I mean, many companies, they mandate from top, they say 3 days in the office, 2 days at home or whatsoever. We didn't give any such ratios or quotas because we understand that our business is very heterogeneous. I mean, we have developers and we know how developers like to work. They can perform their work almost 100% from home. We have journalists, we have salespeople and administration people, and they all have different tasks to perform. And some have more individualistic work, repetitive work, others have to do more creative work. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to give them the freedom to decide on team level how they would like to work. And here, of course, is the risk, who decides? Yeah? Is it the team leader or is it the team? And we clearly said the team decides. The team has to make an agreement, because what we didn't want to do is that the working mode is set by the preference of the leader. So if the leader is a bit old school and he thinks he needs to control all the people in the office, that would cause some friction when his employees would then see that other teams are more liberal and they can work from home for the same tasks. So we wanted to make that as democratic as possible. But of course, we also put some rules. One rule was that it is the duty and the obligation of the leader, of the team leader, to ensure that whatever setup they choose, there is unity and inclusion. So he's not set free from this obligation. He has to take care of that. And of course, if then the team agrees on a setup and he says, look, with this, we cannot ensure unity and inclusion, he has a kind of a veto. And that worked actually very nicely in our company. At least that is my impression, because, you know, we didn't hear many complaints. People enjoy the freedom, and they appreciate of being asked and being included. And we led this process from the top level. So we, the management board, we sat together and said, okay, how we want to work, first of all, as a management team, and then also how to work with our executive circle. And we discussed that. And, you know, the outcome of these collaboration days, which I mentioned, is a result of this process.
Nice, nice. A final question for you, Mark. So the offices themselves, what have you done to them? Have they changed?
No, they have not changed yet, because we have still not enough or too many people back to the office for a longer period. So it's very, very flexible, as I said, but we are in the process. So we are talking to our interior designers, and we are already putting some plans together, how we can rearrange our offices here. And I speak about the office in Warsaw. Mm-hmm. But what we have done in the meantime, we have opened, or we will open, beginning of October, which is actually tomorrow, a new office in Krakow, here in Poland. And this office already is designed more into zones, into activity-based working, that are much more inclined to a hybrid work environment.
Okay, good. Hey, Mark, thanks ever so much for highlighting that. I'm sure people may have some questions, and thanks for hanging in there to answer those later on in this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great having me.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you, Philip. So our next speaker, we're going to move promptly along because we've got a lot to cover today. So our next speaker is Dr. Laura Hambley. And Laura is joining us today from Canada, where she's a partner at Humance's leadership and team development practice. So I'm sure Laura will tell us a little bit more about that now. Laura, I'm going to add the spotlight to you, and you're good to go.
All right. It is wonderful to be here. I hope you can hear me okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
My son just came by, so he's 16 and he's getting his driver's license today, which will be a game changer to us as parents. So cross your fingers for Nicholas passing that test. I'm here to talk to you today about distributed leadership competencies. And thank you, Mark, for introducing the concepts that you are working on at Ringier Axel. I think you are world leaders in this concept. And I've been in this arena for many, many years. Tom O'Neill, who's also on the meeting today, and hopefully you'll get to meet him later. He's with me too, and we've been doing research for almost 20 years on what makes a leader effective from a distance and how we can build high-performing distributed teams and workplaces. So we've published a lot, both in the mainstream practitioner literature and the media, as well as in the scientific journals in our field of industrial organizational psychology And Tom is just involved in a special issue on virtual teams that was released. So he's at the cutting edge of the research end, but we've been working with a lot of organizations and doing this type of work for many, many years. And as COVID has made this a global topic, we're very, very proud to be able to contribute to this knowledge base and development of distributed leadership. And in speaking to Mark earlier, he used a great analogy. It's almost like getting a driver's license to be able to lead remote or distributed workplaces. And we often assume that it uses the same skills as when we were face-to-face, but it doesn't. It requires all the competencies of a strong face-to-face leader in addition to more skills and more nuances, and it takes more effort and intentionality to be strong at it. So it is like getting a driver's license, like my 16-year-old son is hopefully getting as we speak today. So there's a myth that many leaders have, especially pre-pandemic. I think we've sort of turned this myth upside down a little bit through this whole global experience, but the myth is that productivity is lower when people are working from a distance. That's wrong. All the data point to that on average productivity is indeed higher. But what is left out of this discussion often is it depends on the leader. So a leader has the ability to make or break people's productivity, as Mark said, engagement, wellness even. When we see wellness challenges and mental health challenges, the leader may have a key role in that. So we really need to build up strong leaders and leader driver's licenses to do this well. And when we go back to leadership theory, okay? So way back in the day, there was Taylorism or scientific management, which was all about people are machines and we must command and control them and micromanage them, etc. And really, it's about the human side of leadership. And what emerged was this two-factor theory of theory X being more the command and control, but theory Y that McGregor brought into the picture was more about people are motivated in general, and people want to perform in general under the right conditions. So this is more of a modern, humanistic look at leadership. And I think we have to be very careful that we're using this opportunity to pivot organizations to build strong, human-centered leaders. And servant leadership, which Mark was speaking about, is definitely falling under that theory. Why? And with servant leadership and creating a strongly engaging culture, we can reimagine work to be more aspiring, more fulfilling, more work-life wellness, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and some of my co-presenters will talk about after me, because it's really about us as human beings. And I think we can all agree that we don't want to go back to the way it was before, which was on the left here, overwhelmed, tired, anxious, challenged, working to the grind. We want to be fulfilled as human beings and well in our work and our lives. But I can't leave out the fact that, I mean, I know this is going on in Europe as well. It's definitely going on in North America, that we're facing the fear during the fourth wave of the pandemic, and the fear and anxiety that's been built up in a lot of human souls through this whole COVID experience. What we're seeing in North America is employee fear and anxiety about returning to the office in whatever way is determined. There's a lot of fear around that, some of it founded, some of it unfounded, but in the end, it's perception and people are scared. And society is increasingly polarized about vaccines, about masks, etc. We're seeing a lot of that here. Hopefully there's less of it out in Europe, but it's a real challenge for leaders and for society out here. And everyone's on a continuum of risk tolerance and their tolerance of going back to the office.
Laura,
So
apologies for interrupting. It's Ben. I know you had a slide on that last point. I'm afraid we can't see your slides yet. Would you mind bringing those up for us, please?
Oh, you can't see my slides?
I'm afraid not. And I was just waiting to see if it was just the.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you interrupted me.
Perfect.
Can you see them now?
Just coming up now. Yes, thank you. We see them. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to go back to a couple here. So again, distributed leadership takes more effort and intentionality. that whole theory X and theory Y, I want to put up here to show you. Theory Y is where it's at, humanistic leadership, leading the human being as a motivated person and creating workplaces that are more fulfilling and self-actualizing. And then this is the fear slide I was just talking about. Fear and risk tolerance is a huge topic these days. So leaders need the competencies to manage this, because every employee is different. Leaders need to really give employees a voice, take the time to hear them and understand them. In a lot of our clients, we sometimes see guessing. We're guessing at what people are feeling and thinking and what they want, but there is a lot of ambivalence. There's a lot of mixed reactions and very strong reactions to coming back to the office, and leaders need to put their oxygen mask on first. So leaders need to really have the support, the resources, the development, because this is not easy work. And then we need to support people through uncertainty by communicating often, communicating honestly, and even if we don't have the answers, admitting that we don't have the answers, but that we are working hard to determine the answers. So those are just the fear-based challenges, but there's also these other challenges, such as fair and consistent process to determine a person's degree of remote work utilization. So we heard from Mark that their approach at Ringier Axel is very flexible, very liberal. We're seeing a whole gamut of different approaches here, but the main thing is we must be fair and consistent in these approaches, or you're going to disengage and lose talent. We must keep people feeling connected, communicating and collaborating regularly. And again, when we're in a distributed organization, this is more difficult. We need to define a great day in the office, because people are smart. They will come in and say, we could have done this remotely, just as Mark outlined. As well, if I'm driving an hour to and from work in Warsaw traffic or in Toronto traffic or wherever I am in the world, it better be a great day in the office. So that is, again, upping the ante on the leadership competencies that we need. It's upping our game as leaders. And then we need to keep people on a level playing field. So if someone's working remotely and someone's in the office, as a leader, I better be fair and consistent in what I'm communicating and the opportunities that I'm affording to my people. So we developed these capabilities. So Dr. Tom O'Neill and I, over several years, collected a lot of data to determine what capabilities are predictive of a strong remote leader. And Philip van Houten enabled us to do research in Europe with his organization, Plantronics at that time, as well as others, and lots in North America. And we were able to look at these buckets of different competencies or capabilities, we call them, that predict effective distributed leadership. And you'll see a lot of these apply to leaders in general. However, there are intentions and nuances and different subtleties around how these apply in a distributed workplace, which is that driver's license I'm talking about. If we can master these as a distributed leader, you are going to be a good driver of however your hybrid or distributed workplace turns out. And I would say during this time, especially, being accessible and supportive and building trusting relationships is absolutely essential because of the fear that I talked about earlier. And this time of great change and great complexity in our world, leaders need to be intentionally accessible and supportive. We can't just wander the halls and run into people. We need to wander virtually, and we need to use technology to our advantage to stay in contact and to show our support in different ways. And this, I really liked the earlier point about it is a pilot. We're testing it, we're experimenting with what works. We're introducing new technologies, and we need to become better and better at that. And we need to build trust. We need to be able to have the conversation with our people. How are you doing? Okay, good, moving on to business. No, it needs to be, how are we doing? How are you really doing? How are you really doing? And you need to understand where on that anxiety continuum your people are. How are they really coping? How engaged are they really? Having those stay conversations, what would make you want to stay here at this company 3 years from now? So we need to build that trust so people feel that they can be open with us as the leader. Again, this takes a driver's license in distributed leadership. This is not easy overnight skill building. We also need to achieve work-life balance as leaders. We need to model it. We need to be showing how we can work remotely some of the time. We can work in the office some of the time. We are taking care of our health. There's no shame in going for a walk during lunch and saying to your team that I'm taking a lunch break, a walking break, and I'll see you in 45 minutes online. We need to model that as leaders so that we can promote work-life balance in our people. So there are a lot of skills and attributes that go into this model. We can assess it in leaders using the distributed leader profiler, which we've done with many all over the world. And this tool is a really great way to say, where is this leader faring on these different competencies? And how can we make an action plan to ensure that that leader has that ability and skill set to do this right? And again, it's a work in progress. We're all on this journey, but this is more about doing it intentionally. So we have different assessments, we have different profilers, we have amazing blended learning paths. Now that Work Evolution, the company that Tom O'Neill and I founded, was acquired by Humance in January. We have all these cool learning technologies, and we're just really excited to discuss and reach out to us at any time if you want to talk more. And with that, I am going to, I guess, pass the baton back to Philip, who is one of our mentors, and Ben as well.
Yeah, that's it. So we do have just 1 or 2 minutes for questions, Laura. So let's just see if anyone's got any immediate questions for you. I do like that concept around the leadership driving license. And I do agree, leadership is a real behavior that people should put time and attention into improving. And all too many times we're just too focused on the task level as opposed to the people and relationships. It's a really good food for thought there. Thank you. Philip, did you have any points?
Well, I'm very curious what Tom O'Neill is working on at this very moment. So if you can just give him the voice, then maybe Tom can say what he's doing in his labs.
I would love that. Tom?
Sure. Thanks, Philip. Thanks for calling me out, and nice to see everybody today. And it's the first day of our Day of National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So we call it Orange Shirt Day here in Canada. And this is to recognize previous injustices against Indigenous people. So that's why I'm wearing the orange shirt. So I took a few notes, just listening to what folks had to say. And as Laura said, I co-founded Work Evolution with her. I'm a tenured and full professor at the University of Calgary in industrial and organizational psychology, running a lab specializing in remote work as it happens. One of the things that I think comes up a lot is going to be the issue of meetings and what type of meetings to have and how to decide what kind of meeting to have, whether it's hybrid, all virtual, or all in person. And certainly there's the whole inclusiveness aspect, and I think that that's talked about a lot. The other one I think that's important to remember is to whether or not you're doing more conveyance versus convergence kind of communication and kind of work. And so if it's conveyance, that's more on just the information sharing side of things, where there's less need for a lot of back and forth reciprocal information and nonverbals and that kind of thing. Whereas convergence means we have to problem solve, dig deep, maybe make big decisions, strategic planning and that kind of thing. And that's where you want to be closer to the face-to-face. The hybrid is actually going to be the hardest one to run well, especially because most organizations are not equipped with the right technology. So I think that it's important not to take for granted that we could just have a hybrid meeting just because some people may or may not feel like coming into the office that day. So it really depends on the purpose of the meeting, and I think that that's a good shorthand. And the other thing that I think hasn't come up yet as much as it could is I think leaders just need some guidance on developing team charters, something that helps them build the norms for the new world of work that's going to enable them to adapt from a general framework, the norms and sort of standard operating procedures that work for the work that the team does. And there's no way that, you know, one set of policies can perfectly stipulate how all teams should work together. So it's flexibility within a framework, and we've been working with organizations with this, and there's a very solid empirical basis for having teams go through a norming process. So those are some of the things that we're seeing on the evidence-based side.
Well, Tom, I think you're making a lot of people curious. I'm not going to ask my questions which have puffed up, but it would be nice if you could leave a trail behind of what you've done so far in terms of valuable research and where you can be reached. I'm sure you're willing to do that, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Philip.
Thanks, and looking forward to see you in the flesh soon. Thank you. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Laura, and do wish my best regards to your son. I'm sure he'll be fine. I passed third time my driving license, so whatever happens, he'll be all right in the long run. With that, I'd like to pass over to Philip and Anne Bisschop. So as mentioned before, Anne Bisschop is the Wellbeing Director and also author of Countdown to Monday and Wellbeing Equals Profits. So she's got some interesting perspectives to share now in a fireside chat with Philip.
Good. Thank you very much. And I cannot see, yeah, I can see you. Hi, Anne, how are you?
I only see something different on the screen. I don't know what I'm seeing.
Yeah, we can basically, I think it's just me and you that should be visible, so we can.
Okay.
Hey, Anne, so we know each other since a couple of months, but you're a businesswoman, an executive leader. Very recently, you were at that time. So the question that I would like you to share is, what got you into well-being?
What got me into well-being? Well, my personal and my professional life both. No, I have been working in different media companies for more than 30 years, and 18 of them in the biggest media company in Flanders, DPG Media. And I was first sales director, then I became managing director of the radio department. We had 2 big radio stations. And at that moment, when I was managing director of the radio department, my body gave me quite strong signals that something went wrong. I suffered a lot from stress. My back was blocked, my neck was blocked. I slept very badly for more than 11 months. And then on a certain day, I had a really severe attack of hyperventilation. And it was really awful. And how awful it was. Today, I'm happy that this happens to me. And why? Because for me, this was the beginning of something new. And this is perhaps a little bit strange, but after my attack of hyperventilation, my CEO told me, listen, Anne, I don't want to see you here for the next 2 months. Now you're going to listen to your body. I don't want to see you. It was summertime. He said, just take some rest. And after 1 month, I took my phone and I called him and I told him, listen, Peter, I will not come back as general manager of the radio department, although it was really a nice job, but it caused so many stress and that job did not really make me happy. And then I was lucky because our CEO asked me, listen, and we really want you to stay within our company. What would you like to do? And I did not have to think a long time about that question. My answer was, let me take care of our people so that what happens to me will not happen to them. And let me take care of their well-being. Let's ensure that they don't suffer from stress, that they have a lot of energy. So I created this new job myself, and it was really important for me, with the full support of our CEO. Fantastic. So it's a job I created myself. And the fact that I was a member of the board, well-being was immediately very high on the agenda. So.
And if I recall well, you were one of the first people in Belgium to be at an executive level accountable for driving well-being. Yeah, yes. That's wonderful. So you wrote 2 fantastic books. One which is about looking forward to Monday. Yeah. And then the second one, and that's for everybody to read, managers and so forth. It's in Dutch, unfortunately. But and then the second one is Well-being Equals Profit. So it's a very good book. I'm a big fan of it. It's very accessible. A lot of testimonials in it. So I wouldn't mind if you could just share a few things in it. The first question, therefore, is what can organizations do to have energetic, resilient, and motivated professionals?
They can do a lot, and they have to do much more than just offering some fruit or a yoga lesson from time to time, because this is what is happening in a lot of companies. When I'm visiting companies and they tell me, yes, we have a well-being policy, my first question is, and what are you doing? And then it's often limited to, we offer some fruit and we have every week a yoga lesson. It's so much more than that. And that's why I always say to companies, you need a policy. Not just some loose initiatives from time to time, but you need a policy. And a policy based on a vision, based on a strategy, and with, as I said, the full support of the board of the CEO. That's really important. And as you said, I've been written 2 books. My first book was written for the employee. What can you do to be more resilient, to be more happy, healthy, and to count down to Monday and to the new work week? But as well-being is a shared responsibility. What can the organization do? What can the leader do? And what can the employee do? So I decided to write my second book, Well-being Will Bring You Profit. And in that book, I'm talking about the 7 pillars of well-being. And perhaps it's good to give you an idea what those 7 are. The first is the culture and the values of a company. This is really important. Today, again, we are talking about the war for talent. It's difficult to attract talent and to retain talent. Well, then it's very important that the culture and the values of your company go together with the values of the employees, of the people who want to work for your company. So my golden rule is always make sure that your values don't just hang on the wall, but make sure that they are part of the way of leading every day, the way of working, that they are part of your feedback culture and all those things. So that's really an important one. The second one, I'm sure you all know it, the self-determination theory, the ABC of the employee. Just think really about the autonomy of the employees. Do we give them enough autonomy? Do we empower our employees? The B of belonging. Do we really work on that feeling of belonging? The past year, it was really difficult. We missed connection. We missed that feeling of belonging. And then the C of competences. I always have 2 questions to a company. 1, do you know the competences of your employees? And if you know it, do you use them? And today we are talking about job crafting, job rotation. So it's really important to use all the passions and the talents of your employees, because I really think that today candidates, they don't apply for a job, they apply for a career. And that's also the way that companies today are attracting talent. Then the third pillar is a very important one today, is mental balance. And I don't think I have to explain to you, you are the specialists in that mental balance really goes hand in hand with a healthy work environment. So I really believe in what I'm calling the 3 C's of a work environment. Make sure that within the company, you have a place to connect. You have a place to concentrate, although that's, a lot of people will do their concentration work at home right now, and a place to collaborate. So really make sure that you have all those different aspects within the way that you are working. Then the 4th pillar, a very important one, is physical health. And I always insist when I'm talking to companies on, don't only think about the sporty people, but think about everybody. It's not so important that you have a small group for the marathon of New York or the 20 kilometers of Brussels. It's important that moving is part of your company culture. And so organize nice challenges together, but make moving part of your culture. Then the 5th pillar is connection, a very important one. And my message was very strongly the past year, make sure that the physical distancing that we have to respect doesn't mean social distancing. We had to keep that distance. But a question that I often ask to my clients is, okay, did you use the power of nature? And what do I mean by that? I will give you an example. One of the companies where I'm well-being consultant, I saw a mail from the HR director where she said, okay, the company is closed, you cannot come to the company, please have your feedback moment by Zoom or by Teams. And I asked to her, can I send a reply to all with another suggestion? And what I suggested was, please use the nature. Go together for a walk. Go outside. Go for a walk together and take some rest at a nice, how do you call it, a bank, just in nature, but use the power of nature. This is really important. And so, yes, it was possible to stay connected. And one golden rule for me also was, do you have your check-in moments in the morning? When working from home or also in the future in a hybrid way of working, a check-in moment with your team is really important. And then often I get the question, okay, what is the ideal check-in? Is it every day? Is it once a week? Is it once a month? How long does it take? 10 minutes, a half an hour? This is an individual choice. But the most important thing is that you do it, because otherwise you will lose that connection and you will lose that feeling of belonging. So that's really important, I think. Then the growth perspectives, for sure, they are really important. And then the last but very, very important pillar in my book is leadership. And I really focus on the importance, as the speaker, as Mark and Laura also already told you, the importance of empathy, listening, trust, engagement. Today I think that today empathy is even more important than IQ, because I always say when you are a manager, I'm sure that you are intelligent. But sometimes companies make the take not always the best solution, and sometimes they make experts to become leaders. Mm-hmm. But it's not that because you are a good expert that you will be a good leader. So empathy, for instance, for me is the most important skill. So I don't know, Philip, if that is an answer.
No. It's a very rich answer to that. I think we all know, of course, that a lot of managers are not exactly or have not been exemplar in the past. I mean, they are very driven. They are often alphas, and they are extremely demanding on others and themselves. I mean, and sometimes they are, too stressed. What is your advice for these leaders to take good care of themselves? Is it as simple as providing a mirror, or is there other things that you recommend to them?
It's really important to take care of themselves. What I'm telling in my keynotes and my workshops is set boundaries, not only to yourself, also to your team members, but to start with yourself. Why? Because you have to lead by example. Walk the talk. If you send mails during the weekend or late at night, this is not a good example. If you are having every time meetings at lunchtime, don't do that. Lead by example. And for me, for instance, when I'm giving keynotes or workshops within companies, I always say, don't plan meetings at lunchtime. Everybody needs a lunch break. If you want to be productive in the afternoon, please respect that lunchtime moment. And there the leaders have a very important role, because often they plan the meetings at noon, but also they have to lead by example. For instance, I'm telling to every CEO of all the companies I'm working with, please go to the restaurant of your company. And now that we will go back to the office, make sure that the employees can see that you also take that well-deserved lunch break. They have to lead by example. As Laura said, the oxygen mask on an air flight, yes, you first have to take care of yourself, and only then you can take care of others.
Okay. So we're going to round off with the last question. What is, like, in your experience, the kind of biggest bottleneck that you typically encounter, and how to go about it with respect to well-being initiatives?
I think that the biggest bottleneck is still often, but I think it will change, and this is thanks to Corona and the pandemic. I think it's changing now, but the biggest bottleneck in the past was the buy-in of the board or the CEO. The first question was often, okay, how much does that cost? And they saw investing in well-being as a cost and not as an investment. Well, it's an investment, and an investment that will bring you profit. So it's important to have the buy-in from the board, and to work with ambassadors, and to also to involve the employees. I don't believe in a well-being policy that is established by the board without involving the employees. So I really I often work with a start, stop, continue exercise. What should we do differently? Stop with it. What should we do to have less stress and more energy? Let's start with this. And this is really an important exercise where you really involve all the employees.
Okay, thank you very much, and for sharing your elements. You have much more to share. Please hang on for some questions to come in the final Q&A.
Okay, the pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. And some really good common themes coming across around empathy and using our emotional intelligence as leaders. I think that's a really important theme that's come across from all speakers, really. So at this point, I'm going to move across to Ilaria and Silvia. They're going to be speaking to Philip now around happiness as a competence and the power of positive organizations. So apologies, this is not a fireside chat with Philip. This is a presentation. So hopefully you can both turn on your cameras again. So in a minute, Ilaria and Silvia, I'll just let you know that we can see you. I can certainly see your slides now coming up.
Yes, I think
perfect.
You
I see you.
See me.
Yep.
Okay. And
yes, I'm on too. Yes.
Excellent.
Here we
Thank
are.
you.
Okay.
Over to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for hosting us here today. I'm Ilaria Santambrogio. I'm a certified positive genius and Chief Happiness Officer. And I founded with Silvia a startup called Human Realization with the purpose to bring positive transformation to people and organizations.
Hello, everybody. I'm Silvia Nova. Sorry for my voice today. And I am a marketing and sales professional with a strong influence by agile approaches. So let's start.
Yes, and so when we talk about happiness, we often refer to the emotion we feel when we feel happy. Instead, today, we are going to talk about happiness as a purpose. That means to be committed to make happiness a sustainable, long life dimension. Why? Because happiness as a strategy in our life as leaders within organization can really generate extraordinary results. And so let's start our journey with a short video.
So a very interesting video, yes. And let's start. I mean, we love to involve our audience, stimulating them to be active during the different sessions. Therefore, we ask you to pick up your mobile phone, your smartphone, go on the internet page www.menti.com and use the code you can find here on the screen that is 95084892, and we ask you to answer to these questions. So how do you feel watching this video? I mean, what we ask to you is to type in through from 1 to 3 words, what are your feelings, what are your emotions, what are your thoughts after having seen this kind of video. So we can see the word cloud that is, creating. So hopeful, happy, curious, interested, empowered,
intrigued, excited. So inspired, curious, and happy are big. So hopeful, happy. Wow, we are getting a lot of smiley. Energized, surprised also. Yeah, very good. Okay, great. So we can, let's say, go on with our presentation and start giving you some flavors of this happiness as a purpose. And we want to, let's say, have a deep dive on some key elements shown in the video. So surely the only 46 hours of happiness in their entire life is something strong, but it is linked to the fact that we think about happiness as just an emotion, so something that is rare and in any case short. We wanted to mention that happiness is a serious thing. In fact, there are important institutions which talk about happiness. We mentioned some in the videos, but you have to know, for instance, that there are important universities like Berkeley, like Yale, which are offering trainings about happiness. And the topic is raising in the media and in the general interest due to the recent situation and all the stress, the depression, the fear that also Laura mentioned before. So then we have shown you some impressive numbers, those that we call negativity numbers. And the negativity numbers are showing the fact that actually something is not working. There is a problem in the way we have done so far. One above all is really important. That is the 85% of the employees in the world that are not engaged. And it is simple to imagine the ROI in the organization if we are just able to decrease the percentage of few points. And then the last thing is that happiness and work are interconnected. This is why we talk about positive organizations, which are based on science of happiness.
Yes, and I mean the negativity number that we have seen in the video and we have, now summarized, reflect how we have worked till now. So in some way they are saying to us that we need to change something, that we need to change, some approaches, and all the testimonials we had heard before, put some points on really this. And we know that the way of working is in a deep change. We have talked about hybrid working, home working, and so on. And it's sure that we cannot think that we will go back to the way it was before this pandemic. And understanding the reason why the well-being of managers, of leaders and workers in general is so bad becomes really important to produce a change, to start doing something differently. That's why we put also different numbers that we call positivity numbers, because in fact different researches that you can see on this slide, like Harvard Business Review, Gallup Research, Shonacor, and so on, show and demonstrate, prove that happy people within organization are able to generate, for example, a 300% increase in the ability to innovate. Moreover, these kind of people, happy people, are more satisfied with their job, and therefore the retention increases by 44%, and this is a great number. Then there is a 125% less probability of having burnout cases, and we know that we have heard above all in this period many of them. Just think also that a meta-analysis conducted on 225 academics studied proved that salespeople sell up to 37% more than happy one. I mean, 37% are not peanuts at all. And people are 300% more creative than their unhappy peers. And all these data come also from some studies made by Sonia Lyubomirsky, and later on during this presentation we will listen also what she discovered and what we would like to share with you. I mean, taken together, all this evidence suggests that yes, I mean, there is a good business case for promoting happiness and at work. And I mean, all the people that have spoken before us are, I mean, testimonial of this. And before diving in Sonia Lyubomirsky research, I mean, we ask you to go again on menti.com and answer a second question that it's this. In your opinion, what can determine happiness? So let's go on the second question. Okay. So now you can again, I mean, type in from 1 to 3 words that I mean can express your thought on what could determine happiness in general. So we have trust, we have belonging, we have stability, mindset. So what are the elements that have the the most effect on happiness? So we have
respect, motivation, love, achieving goals that I saw also money in another place. On money, there is an interesting study. We don't have time today to talk about it, but it has been studied, the relationship between happiness and money. And unfortunately, it is not a growing line, but it is a line that grows till a certain point and then fall down. Then there is relationships, opportunity, fulfillment. Wow, great. Okay, so let's see what the science and all the researches are telling to us about happiness and what can really determine happiness. The most important study that has been conducted on this topic is by Sonia Lyubomirsky, already mentioned by Silvia. And Sonia is a professor at California University and a PhD at Stanford University. And she has dedicated a large part of her professional life to really study human happiness. And the most important discovery she has produced is a big study that has also been reviewed recently, last year, about that proves that happiness depends on genes for 55%. Then it depends for 10% of our life circumstances, like, for instance, the geography where we have grown up, our level of life, the place where we live. And then 40% depends on our intentional behaviors, so how much really we would like to be happy. And another findings of Sonia is that the latter also influence our life circumstances. So we can conclude that we are responsible for up to 50% of our happiness. So this leads us to make a difference between happiness as an emotion, that is what we feel when we feel happy, and happiness as a purpose, that is what we do to make happiness a sustainable dimension of our life over time. What we can do intentionally is like putting awareness on the fact that we really can be happy, and that we are responsible in a certain part for our happiness. And in fact, thanks to the neuroscience, the contribution of positive psychology that Laura knows very well, and we had a very nice chat about this topic some months ago, we can clearly state that happiness is something objective, and that each of us is responsible for it. The science of happiness is based on this statement that you can read here. And so basically, science of happiness brings together all the scientific disciplines, because it is not just a matter of neuroscience and positive psychology, but happiness is studied a lot in economy. So there are many disciplines that together explain that happiness is not just an emotion, but the ingredient that makes the value of people and organization more effective and rich. And as Sonia Lubomirsky argues, is that happiness is a choice that is accessible to all of us, and a skill that can be developed and trained. So every one of us can do it. And positive organizations are organizations that are consciously deciding to generate the positive numbers that we have seen before, and are basing their culture and their approaches on the principles of science of happiness. And there is a statement in positive organization that there cannot be positive organization without positive leaders. And so here I fully agree also with what Anne said, and the intriguing question that she was making to the leaders to move them to new approaches and new way to look at their people. We know that you are thinking, okay, Ilaria and Silvia, this is very interesting, but what can we do in reality to do and become positive leaders? So there are 4 pillars, which are the results of an extreme synthesis effort made by the Italian Institute for Positive Organization to really help everyone, individuals and companies, to remember 4 areas to focus our energies on. Today, we don't have time to deep dive into each of them. Maybe we could do in a further webinar. What we would like to leave to you today is that happiness is a matter of chemistry. We say that more positive chemistry and less negative chemistry as a little mantra. So we know that by nature we are built to be attracted by negativity, but we know also that we work better with positivity, like when we produce positive hormones like dopamine, like serotonin. So we loved when Anne said, "Please respect the lunchtime."
Thanks very much, Ilaria.
Yes.
Silvia, I'm afraid that's all we have time for on this particular topic, but if I may, I'd like to ask you the first question in the panel discussion. So if I can now invite all our presenters to turn on the webcams again and join our panel Q&A. But my first question is for you, Ilaria and Silvia, and it's come in from Jenny. And Jenny, I'm going to paraphrase your question a little bit here, if that's okay. So how do we effectively keep our workforce happy and support well-being when different people have different needs and different preferences?
So, well, this is very interesting question, and it's not something that you can do in a day. We said in the video that we don't know how we work. So the 4 pillars are a good guide to work on these 4 areas in the same way. And of course, everyone will follow as in their way. But little things, really being conscious that whenever I write an email, what kind of chemistry am I generating with this email? And maybe it's just a matter of changing few words to make sure that on the other side, the reaction is positive, is good, we know that together we can work much better, that we are born to cooperate, and so promote initiatives to meet together, to be together, even if maybe we have to do it in a remote way, or really help people to, the last pillar is more discipline, really help people to work on their life wellness and find time for themselves, energize and so on. So it's really a matter of making them discovering this topic and help them to know it every time more, and understand that this can really help a lot.
Hey, thanks, Ilaria. And I might move now to Anne. And if I could ask as well, if we could stop the slide share at this point, please, so we can just have the videos open. Thank you very much, Ilaria. So, Anne, do you have a different perspective, perhaps? How do you ensure the well-being and happiness of your workforce when people do have different needs and different preferences? Anne, I think you're on mute. Apologies. Thanks.
Yeah, the word of the century, you have to unmute yourself. I think that it's really important to realize that there is no one size fits all. So we really have, the most important thing is know your team members. And I really insist on the fact that one of the slides that I normally use in my keynote also is, I take a big picture of the question, everything okay? And then I say, no, this is a wrong question. Why? It's a closed question. The importance is that today the leaders very often ask the question, how are you? And that they really take the time to listen. And only then, if you know your team members, if you know your employees, you can really make a big difference. I will give you just an example. As I was member of the board, I had a reserved parking place, and we had the bigger cars and a parking plot. And I said at a certain moment, I don't want my parking place anymore. And you know why? Because for me, it was really important to move around in the building, to see the colleagues, to talk to them, to see, hear, and to feel what was happening within our society, within our company. But a lot of managers, they just leave their car, they take the elevator, they go to their desk, and they don't leave their room anymore for the rest of the day. But then you don't know what's happening, and then you cannot change anything about it. Another example, I always started my meetings with what I'm calling the traffic light. And it was as simple as that. I started to, how are we feeling today? Do we feel green, orange, or red? As simple as that. But if you don't ask it, you don't know it. And it's only when you ask it that you can do something about it. So yes, for me, a well-being policy is based on knowing what's happening within your company. And yeah, you can only react if you know which action is needed. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Anne. And a really interesting comment in the chat as well from Tom, who spoke earlier. And Tom's saying you have to enjoy your actual work, your actual job, to be happy in your employment. So sometimes maybe it's impossible to solve that challenge for people if they're in the wrong position. What does the panel think about that?
If I just can add, my motto is do what you love and love what you do. This is so important. You know, I had a fantastic job in the biggest media company. I had a great salary. I had everything. And I just changed my job because I want to do what I'm doing right now, inspiring other companies about the importance of well-being. So yes, I could have stayed there and it was easy money. But today I'm so happy with what I am doing. So I think do what you love and love what you do. That's my answer.
And that's sorry to say, and it's easier said than done, because I see that Tom is prompting me on the fact that deciding on your career orientation based on a profound understanding about yourself and the various, I would say, options and choices that you have with your current employer or customer, whatever, and then make a path through that is not something which is a given. In the old days, you would work for an employer that has laid out things in terms of a career path. I didn't see that since 30 years myself. So those people which are not taking their careers in their own hands, I mean, could end up being in things that look like the grass is greener, but not really tapping into a potential. So career development, smarter careers, becomes mega important at this very moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
And I'd like to say I dedicated 12 years of my career to leading a team of career psychologists in Canada called Canada Career Counseling, which still exists. And basically when people would come to us in tears, usually confused, uncertain, it was one of three things. They chose the wrong career path early on, or they have a toxic leader they're working for. So the boss is a bad boss. Or the third, it's just the wrong company that they're in. It's the wrong culture that they're in. So deciphering which is part of the battle of that self-discovery.
And don't they say most of the time people don't leave a job, they leave a bad manager.
Yeah.
So that's quite well known as being one of the
That's what
key
they say.
factors.
People join companies but leave their boss.
Exactly.
And one more thing that was said earlier is we need to listen to what our people are saying. The challenge is, I would argue that about 80% of managers are not good active listeners, and they never had active listening training growing up, which I think should be a key competency in our kids.
Absolutely. Ilaria, you had a point.
Yes, if I may add this thing that I was very surprised when I read it, that as an average, we studied 20,000 hours before going to university, and we don't spend an hour during our school career to really understand ourselves, to understand our talents, to understand what is our purpose in life, what we would like to do. So we go around, and then probably is why many times we are in roles that we don't like, we are in companies that we don't share the values with. So it's really that we cannot be happy there in any case. So really focusing more on who we are, more than what we do or what we have is really important.
Perfect. And we're talking about the importance of active listening, but also part of that is about asking the right questions, probably, so you get the right answers from your employees. I'm going to go to Mark, who mentioned there's two key questions he asks people at the end of meetings. Mark, what are your questions and how do you make sure that your workforce is feeling engaged?
Well, I mean, we ask two simple questions at the end. The first one is how engaging you find the topic selection of today's meeting. And the second question is, how do you rate the overall online experience of the meeting? But this is just how to rate the quality of the online conduct of the meeting. We also do other surveys. So every once a month, I do with my team also some sort of a well-being energy level audit. So I ask them three questions at the end of the meeting. The first question is, how do you feel? And that goes from happy, better than ever, to miserable. And the second question is, how do you assess your workload from, just too much to too easy? And the third question is, how much time did you devote this week for yourself, for your well-being, be it sports, meditation, or whatsoever? Just for them also that they become mindful again and understand, okay, for some reason the last week I didn't do too much, I have to get back on track. Yeah.
And do you find there's a willingness for employees to answer those questions honestly? Are people familiar now with that process?
Look, I mean, it's anonymous. Yeah. So I don't care who answers what. Yeah? I would like to get a feeling for the overall shape and condition of the team. And of course, if we have then one person who picked miserable, how do you feel? Then we also say, okay, guys, I mean, whoever this is, you can always talk to us. Our HR director is here for you. So I also don't feel good if you have people here behind the screens who do not feel well. So let us help. Let us help you, but please come to us. Yeah, and they also use that. Yeah, so of course our HR director is here very confidential, and that's always important. But our people know that they can turn to us and get then also support.
Yeah, great. And I've heard examples as well, particularly in the agile world, where people use smiley faces or unhappy faces to express their mood and how they're feeling. And the nice thing about this is it's actually quite immediate. So it might be the mood on the day, but it's often reflective of how they feel overall. And it makes it a little bit fun, a little bit more engaging, perhaps, than having to be as honest and open as to say, look, I feel demoralized, I'm demotivated, a little grumpy face, and you can maybe explain that more easily. Does anyone else on the panel have any ideas for how you can work out the mood of your collective workforce, and also then what you can do to address that collective mood?
Well, I think that planning so-called unexpected calls, I've always thought was very nice. I mean, sometimes when people are in trouble, it takes courage to reach out and to share that with other people. And although these days calling people without a planned session is becoming unusual, we almost have to apologize for people to interrupt their day with a call. Yeah, I think it's important that we back up an old tradition of just having an audio call or something like that. I mean, without the facial expressions, because that may be too much at the point in time when tears are just a moment away, and just say, hey, I'm just making a walk and I was thinking of you. Nothing in particular on business I want to talk to. I just want to share to you that I saw this beautiful flower or whatever. And how is your day actually today? And apologies for interrupting it, but this is a good moment for us to chat. And some people might be saying, hey, that's fantastic. It's wonderful for you to think of me at this very moment. I think you do that too, don't you, Mark?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I think you also have a tradition of reaching out to people as they may not expect it.
Cold calling, yeah. So that's what I did, particularly in the beginning of the pandemic, because I really used the time when I was in the car just to call people on Teams and to have a conversation, and that helped me also to reach out to them, to stay in touch.
I find it interesting that you call it cold calling. I've been spending a lot of my time in the contact center industry, and cold calls is not what people are expecting. But here it's an impromptu call, and it's an unexpected call. Therefore, not it may be starting off as a cold call, but it should turn into a warm call over the session, of course.
I think the point is we need to replicate the informal communication, which usually happens around the water coolers.
Exactly.
Cafeteria, and since this is not coming easily in a remote environment, we have to put extra effort to re-engineer this very complex network of mini communication, informal communication. And cold calling is one tool to do that. Another tool is in a meeting to ask opening icebreaker questions, and people put chat just to gossip a bit. So I think the idea is very clear.
That's great.
Sorry, Anne.
No, please go.
No, there is a nice example of a company in Italy. The managing director asked to develop an app to make sure that he spends 10 minutes every quarter with every employee. So the apps calculate if someone is not yet has not yet spent 10 minutes with the managing director and fix the meeting in the calendar. So you receive the meeting, 10 minutes, a coffee meeting with your managing director, even though maybe you are at the reception or whatever. So he does it with everyone.
Nice.
And I think, as I said earlier, I think it can be very powerful to have a walk together. You can invite them to have a walk together, or just do it and say, hey, are you going out with me at noon to have our sandwich in the park nearby? Just try to have this moment of connection. It's really important. Not only the formal connection, but also the informal.
Right, and it's interesting to see a lot of these recommendations require real empathy. That was mentioned a lot during the presentations. It requires emotional intelligence, people skills, empathy, and certainly at the very top levels of leadership. Usually leaders have got those qualities. But what about aspiring leaders, maybe in middle management grades, who are technically brilliant but don't have those people skills? Are they things that can be learned, and are there tools and techniques for that? Any ideas?
That's what I put in the chat. Just very short. I put it in the chat. That's what I'm talking about. The 4 C's. For me, the 4 C's is really important. And this helps the leader to think, okay, for me, it's important to communicate, to collaborate, and to empower and to give freedom and trust, to connect and to care. And then I give a lot of explanations on those 4, but if you just think about communication, for instance, is so important. It's the glue between you and your team members. And too often managers say, I'm too busy right now. And the most important skill for a leader is to be accessible and to be available. Laura, sorry.
No worries. I think these soft skills are actually hard to learn and take time and effort. And I think too often we put leaders into a training and we think that will train them up and then they can go back to their job. But I think those skills need to be embedded in their daily and weekly work lives and supported through the right coaching, the right mentorship, the right DNA in the organization to really reward those soft skills. And I don't like the word soft skills, but that's what a lot of people call them. But those skills, again, we should be teaching in school, in university, in college, and then rewarding and nurturing in the workplace. And leaders need to demonstrate those soft skills. They may not necessarily be high empathy, but they need to be able to show empathetic behaviors. And like Andy said, if they're not naturally empathetic, then surround yourself with people who are, and share the load of that, and learn how to behave in as an empathetic style as you possibly can, given how you're wired.
And Laura, it's interesting how you talk about reinforcement and essentially rewarding the right behaviors, because like you say, so many companies offer these training courses and they try and sheep dip people through leadership training. But do they then reinforce those behaviors through the performance appraisal route and so on? Or is the focus still on those hard metrics like profits and so on? Like you say, it takes more to change a culture, right?
Yeah, it's all what they're rewarded on, so they will do what they're going to be rewarded on. So making those embedded, and people, the engagement and the engagement scores of your team, the turnover levels of your team, etc., should be part of your bonus and your reward system. I mean, I think, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Jenny makes an interesting observation in the chat to say that actually there's an assumption in order to progress in organizations, often people have to take on leadership responsibility, essentially climb that tree. But actually it's not right for everyone. And in some cases, maybe there should be alternative routes, and maybe those who are really good at people management should take on larger parts of the organization. But maybe it doesn't have to be the only route to success. And I've seen an organization which has done that actually. They've gone for larger spans of control for those who are really strong with people management, and then allowing others to progress, but as subject matter experts or specialists. So sometimes maybe that model can work.
But I see an interesting theme coming along here, is that as humans, as part of our base level education, up until we're adults, 18 or later, that the emotional aspects is missing. I remember vividly being at South by Southwest 3 years ago, where a lady said to me that she's focusing in New York on emotional intelligence, it being taught substantially at the age of 14 to reduce crime rates in New York. Yeah, I was very happy to hear that my granddaughter in the United States in a Montessori school is learning to control her anger at the age of 4. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember being taught that at that age, but I think it's just nice to see that emotional intelligence is gradually being baked into the I would say the base curriculums. I mean, you cannot put that on the shoulders of businesses and organizations as people turn into their employment phase of their lives. They got to come equipped with these things. These are basic skills for being successful and showing empathy and so forth. So
for sure, it's a real social good, isn't it? Prime example. Yeah. So thank you once again to all of our speakers today. I'm afraid that is all we have time for, but it's been a really interesting debate on the topic of servant leadership and distributed leadership and happiness. So we brought together loads of themes there around how you can be really effective as a smart leader. So I do appreciate giving up your time today to present and take our questions. So thanks once again.